Hello, and you are listening to Talk to Seattle, and I am your host, Jason Rigdon. I've got a really great show for you this time. I've got two interviews on this episode. Both of my guests today are visual artists whose works you've probably seen on the streets of Seattle. First, the artist behind those wonderful That's What She Said 2020 portraits. I'm sure you've seen these pieces on social media, or if you're lucky, you've seen them in person. These are those eye-catching portraits of women with inspiring or meaningful quotes. And then we have an interview with the person behind those strange and wonderful sea dragon sculptures. I'm sure you've seen these too. They're those colorful mobiles made of wood and broken CDs that occasionally hang from the light poles around Seattle. I really hope you enjoy this episode because I really enjoyed doing these interviews. If you want to learn more about these artists, check out the show notes. As always, I have all the links right down there.
Hi, I'm the artist responsible for That's What She Said 206, and I'm a street artist in Seattle, Washington.
Would you mind, this might be difficult, but describing your artwork?
Sure. Basically, since I do quotes from women, I pick awesome, inspiring, brave women that I admire and do a quick portrait. It's all recycled materials made with Goodwill frames and packaging that I get from deliveries. And then I look for a quote that I really like, and there's a bubble on the art, and I write down the quote. And basically it's just trying to hold some space for these amazing women and to amplify their voices.
And how many of these have you done so far?
There's 42 right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. And when did you start doing this?
So I started actually with a kind of an art contest, really more of a challenge actually. And I actually do it every year, and it's in the month of March. Let's see, it's called Crush Repeat. And they ask you, it's a local Seattle group, and they ask you to do a piece of art every day that's kind of around a theme or a project. And then usually at the end, there's a big art show. And I had decided beforehand that I wanted to take the art to the streets and that I would be anonymous with this. And it just sounded like a fun thing to do. And since March is International Women's Month, I focused on the women that I admire. And so I did one for every day in March, which was 31. And I got those all up on the streets by March 31st. And I focused on the Columbia City, Hillman City area and the Rainier Corridor because I wanted to, have like people be able to see them when they drive, but also, walk around in their neighborhoods and see them. And I only put the pictures on Instagram.
Yeah, the street art is a unique thing because, it's not locked away in a museum. It's in real life, if you will.
Yep.
And how long do each one of the portraits take to make?
If I was just going to try to knock one out, I could probably do one in about an hour or two. Sometimes I pace myself. Sometimes I'll do like 5 portraits in a row on this, it's like silvery packaging material. And then I'll frame them next and kind of decorate the frame. So it just depends on kind of like the approach I take. But if I'm just doing one, I could do it in an hour or two.
And what kind of a reaction have you gotten from the public? Having Instagram means I imagine you can actually get feedback from people.
Yeah, but it's funny because, unless you're into street art and you follow that sort of thing, that's the kind of audience you get. But what's really cool is because I centered it around Columbia City, there's neighborhood sites and Facebook pages, so you can actually read comments about how people are enjoying them, and it was really, really positive. It happened to go right alongside the pandemic, and so people were feeling really cooped up in their houses, but they would be able to go on walks and find these little gems that, with a nice inspiring quote. And then when they figured out that you could follow it on Instagram, it kind of gives you a clue to the location, and people were doing like little hunts for them and stuff.
Yeah, I remember the first time when I saw one of your pieces, and it was that feeling of just, it was like a little bit of magic, and like you said, in pretty dark time.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that it was kind of caught people's eyes from afar, so I make the frames neon, either orange, pink, or yellow, sometimes variation on that. And then I also wanted it to have some movement, so that's why I added the kind of the fringe at the bottom that's silvery and sparkly and kind of sways in the wind. So even if it was far away, you could kind of tell something was happening down the road. You go check it out.
Had you done any street art in the past?
No, actually, this is my first time. And so it was really fun to do. I am a portrait artist, and so I've had a lot of shows, and it's very common of me just to pick my favorite people, or I'll ask my friends who are your favorite people, and I'll do portraits of them. And so I've done that before, but it's the first time I've been taking it to the streets.
Yeah, it's a different kind of experience, especially because in the world of street art, you're doing things that are more three-dimensional, kind of, where instead of just stickers or spray paint and stuff. So that's kind of unique.
Yeah, that was really fun. I used my I have these poster kind of markers. They're paint sticks basically, and that was really fun to use up and get on the glass. So you can't be real picky with the frames that you get at Goodwill and stuff. And so at first I had glass in them, and then there was an incident where one of them broke, and so I switched it over to using plastic just so it's not going to be a hazard on the streets and stuff. So that was one quick switch that I made for it to be a little street friendly. Hopefully no one's messing with them out there. So.
And do you have any advice for people that might be wanting to do kind of more of this 3D kind of street art, not necessarily just stickers, but actually kind of objects?
Yeah, I love things that catch the eye and shine outside. And so, yeah, any way that you could decorate your neighborhood. I saw a lot of it cropping up during COVID. One person commented on my art and said, "Thank you. We started a whole gallery." It was kind of across the street from PCC. And so it was this chain link fence, and a whole bunch of kids started putting their art all along the fence. So it was kind of contagious. And I was very honored by that because I love art and I love kids. And I thought that was pretty cool that started a little trend.
I know that some of the art had been previously taken down. How did that ever get resolved?
Yeah, that was very unusual. I didn't really expect that. And I guess there was kind of a rogue Seattle City Light person who was on duty. And I think they thought that some of the stuff up on the poles were eyesores. And so they took it upon themselves to start taking them down. And in further investigation, the guy, I actually got to talk to the guy because someone gave me a heads up through my Instagram messaging that he was taking him down. And so they gave me his location, and I actually went to talk to him, and he said there was a complaint. But in further investigation, Seattle City Light said there was absolutely no complaint filed. So we thought it was maybe a rogue person who just thought it was his job to take those down. So I actually got him to agree that he would not mess with them anymore. So I feel pretty confident about putting them back up and that they won't be taken down again.
And did you get the ones back that he took down?
Yes, yeah. So it was weird. It was really weird how it turned out. The people who tipped me off actually have a gallery on Rainier, and they were able to get the ones from the guy that he had taken down. And so they were kind of storing them for me. And then when I went to go find the guy, he was in a van, a Seattle City Light van, and he had a couple of the pieces in the back too. So I was able to retrieve that. So as far as I know, I retrieved all of them. There's one AOC that kind of just went missing. I'm not sure where she went, so I might have to redo her.
In someone's private collection somewhere, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you plan to keep on doing these, or is it going to be like a limited time?
I am. It's super fun. I was all gangbusters when I did the 31, and that's why they came out so fast for the challenge. But it's really fun. It's kind of a formula, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. The thing that's slowing me down now is I don't want to be buying full-priced frames and stuff. So, and I haven't been back to Goodwill, so I don't have a source for frames right now. So when those come my way, or if people donate them, I will keep going on that. I have some friends that are in the know that give me frames and stuff, but it's kind of slowed up recently. So yeah, I guess it's a matter of supplies.
And I think I saw one of them in Capitol Hill. Are you kind of distributing them a little bit further?
I am. Let's see, I started Columbia City. I made it up to Beacon Hill, made it to Skyway, put 4 in Capitol Hill, and just recently made it over to Ballard and Fremont. So yeah, they're kind of spreading out.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your artwork. It's such a delight whenever I see one. It's their little discoveries.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate the interest.
If you like this show, if you think that there is value in what I'm creating here, would you please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts for Talk to Seattle? If you're an Apple person, it's easy to do and really helps other people discover the show. And if you're listening and you're not a subscriber of the show, would you please subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to right now?
Okay, yeah, I am SEA Dragons.
And what do you do on... how would you describe what you do? Like, would you say you're a visual artist, or are you something else?
I think it would have to be something else. I don't know. I don't know what I do. Never really went into this with a definition of I'm going to do this. There are some definitions, but I don't even know if I'd call myself an artist, really.
How would you describe your work that we see around town?
Yeah, that's interesting, because there's a couple times where I'll talk to some people that I know that I'm very, very close with, and they don't know what I do, or they'll ask, what were you up at 3 a.m. for? I don't get it. And I put up mobiles. And they're smashed up CDs and wood and paint and wire. Sometimes they'll have discarded bike tires. Sometimes they'll have solar powered LEDs. I don't put a hard definition. I mean, sometimes I've expanded a little bit. I think initially it started out, I had some hard, fast rules for myself. They're called guy poles. They're attached to telephone poles to kind of, some people I know who have civil engineering backgrounds tell me that they're necessary as a counterbalance for the pole. To me, I've been noticing them for years and thought they always just looked kind of silly. I think they're a place for me to hang my art, and I appreciate it if they put those poles at the right height, not too high so I can't reach them, but not too low so that I have to put art in a spot where it's going to bang somebody's head. I'd appreciate it if City Light put those poles at the proper height for me, which is about 12 to 15 feet high. If they could start putting those at that height, that would be much appreciated.
And when did you start making these things?
I started making them because there were lots of, initially these were all from discarded materials that I had a lot of that I was like, didn't know what to do with them. I started about about 6 years ago in 2014. There was some discarded wood that didn't know what had been cut up in some various interesting shapes that was going to be heading to the dump. There was some wire, didn't know what to do with that. There was some spray paint. And of course, there were, I used to play some music and I put some CDs out that I can't imagine why nobody bought. So I had thousands of those and didn't know what to do with them. So yeah, it initially started with that as a way to I started making stuff with it, and then I think one night finally said, "Oh, I should go put this out there, not just make something with it, but get it out of my house and out of my life, and maybe it'll do some good for somebody else." So it was, initially a way just to do something with the junk. I don't like to call myself, say that I use, that some people will talk about saying they're recycled art and things like that. And I don't want to go down that route, because sometimes there's things that I'm using that are recycled. Sometimes I'm buying things that are, if it's very specific as to what I need. I buy lots of paint now. Lots of paint. Occasionally I get some gifted to me, but a lot of times it's stuff that I can't use. Also, I've been in situations, known people who did recycled art in the past, and saw if you ever put that out there that you do recycled art, look out. Everyone that knows you is going to use you as their dumping ground. It'd be like piles of just junk on this person's doorstep, and it's like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, oh, this one I'm just going to have to take to the dump. Yeah. So that's part of the reason why I don't want to put it out there. But also because I think it would be a little misleading. People think recycled art, oh, he's doing good for the environment. It's like, oh gosh, you should see when I'm spray painting. Like my neighbor starts yelling at me, one of my neighbors, and he's not even downwind, he's just a real asshole, but he'll start yelling because it's some fumes. Spray paint's nasty. There's nothing environmentally, cracks me up when people do environmental art but they're using spray paint. I've seen some people do environmental murals. It's like, you're using spray paint. That's nasty. save the oceans. But you're using, so I don't like to get too, it's art. It's about what aesthetics and things like that. The part of using things that were discarded was the initial inspiration for doing this, but now now it's kind of the problem. I've sometimes I think recently I had a few pieces I was just hanging on, didn't really have a good spot to put them, and it's like, this neighborhood I've pretty much blanketed, that neighborhood's blanketed. Hey, I haven't gone to Fremont or Ballard. better go there, because I had like 10 or 12 things that were just taking up a lot of space that needed somewhere to go. So yeah.
How many do you think you've made?
It's kind of funny. I did an interview with Jasmine at The Stranger back in, I think it was August of 2019. At that point, I had estimated 300. Now it might be close to 400. I'm very loose in my documentation. The one spot that I didn't start doing an Instagram for this from the get-go. I didn't really have a plan. It was kind of goofy. I think initially I was tracking people were asking me, a couple of people who knew about it were going, "Hey, how are you documenting this?" And I told them things they would just shake their heads. I was like, "Yeah, I've got a Google Doc where I write down descriptions of them and where I put them, and if somebody tore them down and if I tried to put it back up, they're like, no, 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 and so I didn't really start taking pictures of them so there's a neighbor of mine went out with me once. There's a few people who've helped me. She went out with me once and she was an artist. She's actually quite accomplished artist. She's a little bit older than me, and has some history with that. She's like, "Oh, you got to document. You got to take pictures." I was like, "Okay." So I started taking pictures and putting them up on Instagram. But I didn't do that till I'd been doing it for I think at least 2 years or longer. And then, the Instagram isn't a good gauge for that. First, for that reason. And second, I don't necessarily always post every piece on there. For instance, there was a time last August. I hoarded for a little while to do this, but I had a big deal. Can't really say why I wanted to do this particular number, but had several helpers, but put up 50 in one night. Between all the ones that I put up myself, and we had about 5 or 6 parties of helpers who went out and put some around. The documentation of that was so scattered and coming into me via texts, and I lost track of it. And I think, I don't think I posted 50 pictures from that. I maybe posted 20, maybe 30. So I'll miss a few, and I don't really care too much. So the number, I'm not out to go, "Oh, I got to hit 500 or something like that." I don't even know. It's a rough estimate based on, the one thing I do use is I can estimate on is when I buy the cable ties, because I'll buy those in packs of 100. And so that kind of helps me. Though to complicate matters further, there's some that only need one cable tie, there's some that need 2, and then there's some of the big heavy ones that need 3. So most of them need 1. But so I've done a really scattered job on documenting. That hasn't been my biggest goal. Like, I don't really go out of my way to promote the Instagram or anything like that. I don't have.
Well, does your art even have does it have a signature on it? I was looking at one of them and I wasn't sure if there was any, like, other than the work itself is kind of like, is there any
Yeah, that's actually
signature?
a really good point and a good question. I shied away from that. So yeah, I think, one of the things I really like to do when I travel, which I haven't done any of lately and don't have any plans to, I don't want to go on a flying petri dish for I don't know how long, but one of the things I used to like to do when I would travel is, if you go someplace, just do a walking, even self-guided. Some places would have good street art tours, like Bogota has a great street art tour. Rio has a wonderful street art tour. You can walk a guide. Found it was a great way to do it. But the thing that I notice all the time is I would be taking these pictures, sometimes without a guide, but people would have their tag in there. You can look them up really easy. And I don't do that, and I don't do that kind of deliberately. In that, if somebody wants to find out, they kind of got to dig, and I think it has a little more. Like the mystery of it, you kind of have to dig, and then sometimes when you find out the mystery, it's like whatever. But if you have to dig a little bit, you have to ask a few people. You have to ask the right people. It means a little more when you finally figure it out.
I've definitely noticed talking to people about your work that frequently people, their journey oftentimes is thinking that it was a one-off piece.
Oh yeah,
And then as they discover more, they realize there's kind of like more and more, and like it's more of a shared experience.
yeah. So it's that, and it's also it's more about the experience, really. I'm not. I'm not, at least right now, I'm not out to, I'm not trying to sell anything that I do. Well, that's qualify that a little bit. I do have some, and this isn't a plug at all. This is just, I just started putting some up in only in one shop. There's one shop that offered to have them. It's called Andaluz in Columbia City. There's a few. I'm very careful about because one, I'm not out to sell them, but two, I've been experimenting over the years with how do you seal these? How do you protect them against the weather? Because you put stuff up in Seattle and, it's going to get rained on and there's going to be some major windstorms. They're going to get beat up, and some of them get beat up really bad to where I don't feel comfortable selling them. So I've got some at Andaluz that are specifically indoor only, and I call that out. Hey, you buy this, keep it indoors. It's, not. So that's part of the reason. One of the things I've noticed is that a lot of times and this isn't a criticism of artists, because I mean, hey, if I have a day job, but if you are what would you call it, a working artist, you make your living off of your art. Yeah, if you're doing something like that, yeah, you aren't just gonna, you want people to find it and find it now. And some of the things I remember, I think it was Rio, when after I did the street art tour there, I started following some artists there, and bam, just immediately after following them, it was almost like it wasn't a form letter. It came from the heart, but it was like, hey, notice you like my art. Would you consider buying a piece for, it's like, immediately hit with the hard sell. So, which was kind of turned me off a little bit, because I'm like, dang, I really liked your art. But then you come up and goes and like, well, how much do you but there were with some of these artists, there were certain ways, I did support them. They had, because I think you might get this thing, like I got this problem with, I don't want to have too much stuff in my personal space. It's all about like getting it and getting it out. It's like, I don't want to, nothing against buying your art. I just don't know where I'd put it. But there were some artists who were doing things like selling temporary tattoos and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. Things like that.
I was wondering, how long does it take to construct each one of these? I mean, I see some that are a little simpler, and then other ones that are just incredibly complex.
Exactly. There's some of the ones that are very, very simple, I'll make those, for me to actually put an hour timeline on them, it's kind of difficult. I'll do them in steps. I mean, there's parts to them. Like for your basic piece, there's a head, there's the wire connecting two wings, and then the wire that hangs it up there. Very simple. Usually those are made in conjunction with multiples that are cut out, cut them out, paint them, get the CDs, reflectors, the teeth and the eyes on them, and then make the wings, and then connect them. Labor per on one of those, gosh, I estimate maybe a couple hours per, hard to say. But then there are some ones that are more complicated. And I'm thinking of particularly the ones that have solar powered LEDs on them. Those are like, for example, there's one that's right on the Union Street side of Pony is one example. And another big light up one is right by the PCC in Columbia City, is another example. Those, oh God, I don't know, like 10, 12 hours per, because and this is the weirdest thing to say, like the most tedious part is actually the lights. The lights are very tedious. I've come up with a better, I'm getting better at the methodology of getting those lights installed on them, but it is far and away, putting the lights on, it's like when you get them done, it's like the most satisfying. Like, oh, cool. Can't wait till night comes and we get to see this one. Some of those sometimes are. I admit, some of the light up ones I've had to. I'm just like, maybe we'll put it up tomorrow night. Maybe the next. We'll hold on to it for another day here, just because kind of enjoying it now. I should get this out of here and share it. But the lights part is so tedious because they're really tiny, and getting them wedged in and getting those lights, this all is string. You have to be really careful with them because they're kind of delicate, and I've broken them. That part of the work is one of those things where I think every time I'm doing one of those, and there aren't very many light up ones in the whole scheme of things. I could probably count them on, two hands, well, maybe more than 10, but the amount, that not just the amount of labor, but the type of labor it is just so tedious that it's one of those things where I say to myself, like, God, I wish those are the spots where it's like, I wish I was a real artist who was making money doing this, and I was hot shit, and I could just have an assistant and pay an assistant to do this, because it's like it's nothing creative there at all. It's really just like, yeah. Incidentally, I've run out of LEDs at this moment. I have one more set, and for any piece that goes up there that has LEDs on it, I have to use at least 2 of them. But I got like a whole bunch of those on closeout about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago. Big box of them, and I've just about run out of them. So they improve the technology on them, the ones I have, so I think they won't break as easy, but the price went back up. So now I've got to wait till those go on closeout now. And then, but it's also the light up ones, you need a specific space for as well. You can't, just having a street light over that spot can knock it out at night, because the solar collectors won't think it's night.
Yeah. Well, you have ones that are, I suppose maybe abstract kind of, and then ones that are more kind of concrete. I'm thinking of, like, I suppose the pony one actually had a pony.
Sure, good.
And then there's the Trump one. What makes you want to make ones that are more concrete?
I don't know who Trump is. That's King Dotard.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But no, really. No, that's an interesting thing. When I first started doing these, they were all completely abstract. Had no desire. I think the best thing I could think of at the time when I was doing them, I didn't tell anybody this, like when they're asking, but I was just kind of thinking to myself, oh, it's kind of like if Alexander Calder wasn't quite as good and he was on acid, was kind of my initial thought about it. The balance on some of them was a little wonky, and hell, the balance on a lot of them is still a little wonky. But then there were a couple where accidentally I tried, I think I put one up at Dick's that I thought looked kind of like an orange alligator. The Dick's on Broadway on Capitol Hill, to be more specific. And there's no spot to put one there now. But that was the first one that was a little more figurative. And I think at the time I thought, that'll just be a one-off. And I, kept doing the abstract ones. And then I started developing more and more that just kind of like gravitated towards doing some that were very figurative. That one neighbor of mine that I talked about earlier, she went out with me a couple other times, and we would talk about it. And she was interesting. She actually she got me talking, like she was going like, I didn't have a name for them. and actually, I'll credit her for coming up with the name. She was like, "Yeah, I was telling my friends, and I was calling them the Seattle Dragons," and I was like, "Huh, okay, that's a nice ring to it." And then I told her later that I was like taking up that name. It was good. She goes, "I didn't call it that. They're gargoyles." I'm like, really? But dragons fly. Gargoyles usually just kind of sit there on the top of the building. She's like, "They're gargoyles." I was like, hmm. She's like, "Oh, okay. We can do all the reptiles. They can be snakes. They can be gargoyles." I was like, okay, dragons. They can be gargoyles. Okay, fine. But she was the one who got me thinking more in terms of them being, figurative. I don't think that was her goal or anything. It was just something, it's just kind of like feedback and something that she was sharing. So I was like, it's interesting. But now where I'm at, and this is like kind of long term, and it's kind of, I've been developing it over probably the last year, and I'm getting more serious about it now. And it's get back to why I was calling that one piece we were just talking about, King Dotard, is they are characters. And some of them are just bit characters and things like that. But I think back to my, some of them are, most of them, almost all of them are good. That King Dotard is evil. But they're like time traveling superheroes. Time traveling dragons, we're going to save the fucking world is kind of the tagline for it. And so there's several of them that are, have various names for. That one that I called out that's by the PCC in Columbia City, I refer to that as the mothership. I kind of want my neighbor to be the voice for that one, but I don't know if she'd go for it. She might not. But yeah, I want this to be ultimately where I'm going with this is it to be and it's going to take some work, but it would be an animated, I don't know if I called a movie or a TV series or something like that. But it would be animated. And so they're characters. There's, the mothership is kind of the queen of the good side, if you will. And then there's a few others with her. Almost all of them, except for, are good and are kind of they're all their superpower is time travel, basically. And then there's King Dotard, who is that one he's hanging up. He sits on his golden throne of lies, and his which for those of you who haven't seen it, actually God, that one, he's by the Bank of America in Capitol Hill on Madison, and he had a golden toilet seat. Though recent picture somebody sent me, the toilet seat has disappeared. I don't know, perhaps with all the activity that's gone out there, maybe somebody had to shit really bad and just, I'll take this one. And which probably sent their shit off into some other dimension since didn't know they were shitting into a time machine. I don't know if we'll find them again. We'll see. But anyhow, yeah, he's kind of like King Dotard is kind of like akin to kind of like Biff from Back to the Future, kind of. Only he looks the way he does, and he sits on that golden toilet, and his big thing is he just sits on that golden toilet and he says, "Get out of my castle, dummy." And he has a couple of the only others that are evil with these are what are called I call them the robber barons, and they're the ones that they have a very similar pretty much look to King Dotard. They have the same head, But they just have heads and wings, and the locations I put those at is by banks. Usually Bank of America it tends to be a good one, but they're usually at banks. For instance, there's one still flying, barely. It's been tattered, but at the Bank of America in Rainier Beach. There's one. I think it's still up there. The Bank of America on Beacon Hill. A couple other banks that they like to hang out at banks because they, help rob money. That's what they like to rob the people's money, and so that's where they hang out. That's King Dotard likes to sit at the bank just because he's just sitting there on his golden toilet, robbing everyone's money, and So as you can tell, as I'm talking this, I need to crystallize it a little bit more. I do actually have some things written down as the characters, and some of the how I want this to go. It's before COVID hit. I was initially thinking what I wanted it to do is I wanted it to be something that would play in an actual theater, and I wanted to have it be an experience where people would go, like, you've been to like a Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of thing before? No. Have you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted people to go there, you're not just going and sitting there watching a movie and eating popcorn. You're like throwing shit at each other and stuff like that. Some theaters might not want to take it because there's dangers involved, but there could be some live actors, and I don't know where things are going now. So I'm, just settling back, and I'm realizing I need to focus on the concept a little more. I have a few other things in there that I'm playing with on the concept that I think are kind of goofy, like the voiceover announcer, the VOG that starts. I think it might be episodic now. I'm not sure. I think probably be episodic. But the VOG will be like through a distorted pitch shifter, almost Orson Wellesian kind of voice, only through a distorted pitch shifter, making it sound a little bit like some sort of alien, but with a really deep voice. And I'm going through and taking Nostradamus quatrains, but then taking additional liberties on the liberties that have already been taken with those, just because, just to make them fit my needs more. So they kind of start as a Nostradamus quatrain, just a couple of those as the intro to set the scene. But so I think it'd be funny. Want people to have some fun with it. So that's where I'm going with it ultimately. I think as far as like next, where I want to take it, and I'm not much of a writer, and it's something or I should say more, I haven't been much of a writer. And it's something that I'm focusing on honing that a little bit, because a lot of times I think, as I just told you, like I've told some people, like collaborators and stuff like that, what I'm thinking of, and they'll ask me questions that'll make it really obvious to me, like, I didn't describe this very well. I've got this idea in my mind as to what it's going to be, and I'm not getting it out. So I'm focusing on the writing part, which is a challenge because I don't have a huge creative writing background. Yeah.
Do you have time for one more question?
I was going to ask you when you were going to cut me off. No.
No. I was just kind of wondering, kind of unique in our local street art of, you have three-dimensional creations. Do you have any advice for other kind of street artists or people that want to do 3D objects in the public?
Yeah. All of this just kind of came by accident. And actually, one of the things that I really like seeing is when there's other people who are, I think, I didn't know what I was doing early on. And then one of my son's friends' sister, I think, met me at some event, and she was telling me, oh, you're using this space that people haven't used before. And I didn't even know that. She had actually done a lot of street art before. And honestly, when I first started doing it, somebody told me it was street art. I was like, oh, okay, sure. I'll run with that. Um, but that's one thing to think about if you're wanting to get into things is look for a space that isn't being used. Because that's one of the things that's really benefited me. I don't have any, other than I think there's one spot where somebody likes to tear down my piece and put up a cross. Other than that, I haven't had any, like street art battles, where you'll have somebody will go tag a spot and somebody else will, I don't have that. At least not yet. Might have it, if people get the ideas and they want to start using the space. But, I get really excited when I see particularly people doing telephone pole art, utilizing those in creative ways. One area, I mean, I don't know if anybody would take me serious on this, but one area I see a lot of potential is dumpsters, because you can go do whatever the fuck you want to a dumpster and nobody's going to, I mean, people, you're not going to be competing with too many people. I think there's a couple of people I've seen who've, not just tagging dumpsters, but there's stuff you could probably do with dumpsters and nobody's going to encroach on your space for that. Yeah, I think finding a spot that isn't, a space that isn't being utilized that can be activated, that can be good.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for all this wonderful art that I see every day.
Oh, you're welcome.
You've been listening to Talk to Seattle, and I have been your host, Jason Rigdon. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, would you please do me a favor? Would you please consider telling a friend about the show, or maybe posting something about Talk to Seattle on social media? I don't have any money to advertise, so I really just rely on word of mouth to help people discover the show. So if you like what you hear, would you please tell other people? Once again, thank you for listening.